What if alien and UFO disclosure isn't just an isolated, singular, reactionary event, but a carefully controlled revelation performed by global governments that seem to hold a monopoly on the truth about unidentified, anomalous phenomena? Is it possible that Donald J. Trump will be the disclosure president? And what did Thomas Jefferson and America's founders know about mysterious objects in the sky long before we did? And is it unbiblical to believe in intelligent life beyond Earth? Today's guest is here to answer these important questions and more right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Skywatch Television. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Today, we continue a mind-boggling conversation that we started last week that I promised, and I think Tyler delivered, was unlike any conversation that we've ever had in the history of Skywatch TV. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back Tyler Gilreath. We're talking, of course, about Tyler's brand new book, and I'm going to bring it up for you on the screen. Take a look at that cover. I promise you, you've never seen a cover like this. The Liberty Code, how the founders' secret writings expose the UFO agenda and the coming alien crisis. Ladies and gentlemen, did Tyler bring the receipts last week? For those that missed, Tyler, this cover is unbelievable. Describe again what people are looking at when they see this image before we dive into this week's conversation.
Yeah, it looks like something out of a sci-fi movie, but then you read the subtitle,
right,
and you quickly realize that this is historical documentation that takes the reader on a historical journey through all of the presidents, beginning at George Washington as it relates to the UFO non-human intelligence topic.
Right. And for those that missed last week, let's recap a bit of what we discussed, and then let's hit the ground running. If the UFO and alien phenomenon is real, what evidence, of course, is being presented to us that it is?
A lot, quite frankly. And if you've been watching the news, you have probably noticed that there are clips, snippets of congressional meetings. For example, on July 26, 2023, there was a House Oversight Committee on National Security where they listened to really three primary whistleblowers that have tremendous experience. One was David Grush. He was actually tasked by the UAP task force to investigate if there were any black budget programs or anything inside the government that would have information on the UFO phenomenon. He did his investigation. He came back and emphatically said, I've interviewed over 40 witnesses, and there are a lot of elements inside of our government that are working with private contractors who have alien tech. And that was said again on July 26, 2023. In that same hearing, we heard from Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot, David Fravor, retired Navy commander for the USS Nimitz, who actually chased a Tic Tac UFO. We heard in November 13th, 2024, from a joint subcommittee hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomenon. We heard from 5 individuals who are high up in our government. One was Dr. Tim Gallaudet. He was a retired Rear Admiral. We heard from Luis Elizondo, who was the director of ATIP. We heard from Michael Schellenberger, which is a trusted source for those coming out as far as what do they know about UFOs. He is a investigative journalist. We heard from Michael Gold, who is a former NASA Associate Administrator of Space Policy and Partnerships. And so we are hearing for the first time, at least in our lifetime, otherworldly revelations from people really experienced high up in our government saying, we are not alone.
You know, so many people talk about this moment, the label, official disclosure. In your view, what is this disclosure that people tend to talk, they focus on it, they rehash it, people have different views, they speculate different reveal times. When do you think we will finally have it?
Well, that is a great question. I would say to you that disclosure is a process, not really a singular event. For example, April of this year, there was a new military footage that we saw for the first time that was released by investigative journalists Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. And what that is another Tic Tac UFO off of the coast of California. It was recorded by the USS Jackson, and this was an event that took place in 2023. Now, why is this important? It's important because we have footage going back to the early 2000s of Tic Tac UFOs, and they say, oh no, that's just coincidental, it's our own craft. Well, 20 years later, we're still seeing the same craft in the same area by our government. And so we are getting video footage, gun camera footage. We are getting radar displays of what is happening. We are getting thermal footage. And so really across all of our sensor systems, we are collecting this data. In fact, recently there was a named program that came out in one of these hearings called Immaculate Constellation. It kind of sounds like Immaculate Conception. This program is a secret program inside of our government that is tasked with collecting and housing footage of craft of unknown origin. We also learned recently that there was another program called Kona Blue, a special program that really never got off the ground, but what Kona Blue was going to do before it was defunded was to attract UFOs with our military assets in the middle of the ocean. In other words, they were going to put a lot of nuclear material in one area to attract the UFOs because historically they have impeded our sensitive military installations. They have turned on and off our nuclear capabilities. And so Kona Blue was going to attract UFOs and shoot them down. So that was a revelation that came out recently. And so we are getting more and more evidence that for decades, our government has been collecting this information, has been, according to the claims, collecting and reverse engineering technology of non-human origin. So is it going to happen one day? Will there be catastrophic disclosure? Well, I'm not ruling that out, quite frankly, because there are many groups that are tired of waiting, quite frankly, and they're sitting on a bevy of evidence. So keep watching the news, folks, because it's happening.
Why do you think that is, though? That it seems to be that the government has like a monopoly over the control of what information is going to be revealed and what's going to be suppressed. Yeah. Even last week, you're showing all these documents. You can tell they're heavily redacted. They're keeping these things under wraps. Do you agree with what is probably frameworked as conventional thinking, that it is because they fear a big panic were they to tell the truth about what these things are or when disclosure may happen, to avoid a mass panic, in other words? And I guess if you agreed with that premise, there's also this flip side that it almost suggests that the government thinks that they can control when a disclosure event might take place. So if these were, beings from the atmosphere that just showed up unannounced, you would almost think they would take the view that they're being caught off guard. So what is it that's giving them this measure of confidence that they can control this until the time of their choosing to make big reveals, etc.?
Well, it is a mirage that our government is going to control the narrative. I believe, as many around this table believe, that what these are supernatural enemies that have had eons to plan what is unfolding before our eyes right now.
Yes, agreed.
And this goes back, again, decades. Here is a document. This is dated February 24th, 1944. It is by Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I have the original document right here. It's hard to read the font, and so I have a newly typed version here. But let me just read some of this to you. Now, this was including some very important names that you'll probably recognize. At the beginning of the letter, FDR said, I agree with the OSRD proposal of the recommendation put forward by Dr. Bush and Professor Einstein. You ever heard that name before? That a separate program be initiated at the earliest possible time. I also agree that application of non-terrestrial know-how and atomic energy must be used in perfecting superweapons of war to effect the complete defeat of Germany and Japan. He said, it is my personal judgment that when the war is won and peace is once again restored, there will come a time when surplus funds may be able to pursue a program devoted to understanding non-terrestrial science and its technology, which is still greatly undiscovered. Okay, and what this is basically a document by FDR that said, as soon as this war is over, we are going to spend a little money and a little time trying to figure out what these non-terrestrial crafts or technologies are. Because, as you know, this UFO topic, at least in the modern era, really came on the scene in the 1930s, the 1940s. And so in the book, I go into great detail about all of this, but you have presidents such as FDR, you have Truman, you have Dwight Eisenhower, And this was a special and critical time in our country's history. The reality is that sitting presidents have known about this topic of are we alone? Not only do they know about it, but for 70, 80 years, they have been in possession of what they are calling ET craft. Now, I want to bring this a little bit to current day because what is happening is an explosive revelation. You ask the question, can they control the narrative? I want to say, well, no, they can't. In fact, now they are understanding that this is getting bigger than them. And there is a private citizen group for the very first time. Their name, coincidental, is Skywatcher. Okay? Not Skywatch TV. This is Skywatcher, an independent group of people who have retired or left the government that were involved in retrieving alien craft. Okay, so these are ex-military folks who were read into the program. That's what it's referred to as the legacy program or the program. For the very first time, you have these people coming together with government approval. Now, this is very important because before, if you said anything about what you knew, they would shut you down. You would be visited by men in black. You would be threatened, and they use this psychological warfare campaign on the populace. Now they realize we cannot contain this information any longer. And so through individuals such as Jake Barber, who was a recent whistleblower that came out on News Nation, he was interviewed by Ross Coulthart. He said that his job was to recover alien craft, and now he is doing so with the help of his team. You can find them on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel where they are in real time releasing what it is they are doing. And it's mind-blowing, folks. It is mind-blowing because they are summoning these craft. They have identified some 8 or 9 different classifications of what these craft are, and they are summoning them 2 different ways. Let me say that again. They are summoning them 2 different ways. One way they call the dog whistle. This is a machine-based frequency that they are putting out into the universe. And they said with 100% success rate, when they turn on their machines, here they come. And they are now recording them and posting them on YouTube. Here is perhaps a little scarier, surprising aspect of this phenomenon that is unfolding. They have what they call psionics. Psionics are individuals that are inclined or trained to tap into some other dimension, if you will, with their mind. The word they are using is neuromeditative signaling. Now, if you are familiar with the Bible, you know that God, throughout the Old Testament, continually warned not to go down this road, right? And so now, with new terminology, they are using psionics to invite and summon a craft to land. That is their ultimate goal. And the U.S. government is working, at least greenlighting, what they are doing. The group Arrow, which is now the new UFO office for the U.S. government, has visited what they call the range, where this takes place. And so that just gives you a small sample of what is happening right now and how this is coming out.
You know, you're talking about these dog whistles and being able to summon with 100% success rates these varying crafts and maybe beings. And so the question that I think of next is it unbiblical, Tyler, in your view, to think that God created intelligent life elsewhere in the universe without explaining it to us first? I mean, obviously that's a bit facetious, but you understand the question.
Sure, absolutely. And I am of the opinion, based on my study, that God can do what he would like to do. Having said all that, many Christians find it problematic theologically, quite frankly. There is a whole field of study called exotheology that delves into this entire topic. Many see this problematic when it comes to redemption. In other words, if God made people on other planets, would that require Jesus to travel there and die for each species? There's questions like that I answer in the book. I go into great detail. We don't have time here. But it's a great thought experiment, and it's one that is genuine. Now, let me read this quote. This is from Thomas Paine. He wrote in Age of Reason in 1793, "Though it is not a direct article of the Christian system that this world that we inhabit is the whole of the habitable creation, Yet it is so worried up there from what is called the Mosaic account of the creation, the story of Eve and the apple, and the counterpart of that story, the death of the Son of God, that to believe otherwise, that is, to believe that God created a plurality of worlds, at least as numerous as what we call stars, renders the Christian system of faith at once little and ridiculous, and scatters it in the mind like feathers in the air. The two beliefs, Payne writes, cannot be held together in the same mind, and he who thinks that he believes both has thought but little of either.
Not to elevate myself to the level of a genius like Thomas Paine, but I think Dr. Michael Heiser answered this question very well in a thought experiment, basically saying, look, if you properly understand Genesis 3, where God says, let us create man in our image, or humanity in our image, he wasn't saying that we humans are like God because he's a biped standing about 6 foot tall. It's that we are God's image bearers, his imagers, if you will. Sure. We are his moral agents on earth. So if a spacecraft lands on the White House lawn and an alien comes out and says, take me to your leader, that doesn't change our understanding of Christian doctrine one jot or tittle. Right. We are still saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. Right. It could be that the people from Zeta Reticuli were created as God's image bearers on Zeta Reticuli. We don't know.
That's right.
Having said that, I don't think there's any legitimate evidence we're being visited by Zeta Reticulans, but is a proper understanding of Christian doctrine. Sorry, Mr. Payne, he's wrong.
Yes, he is wrong. God can certainly do what he would like. Now, let me say this before we move on here. One aspect of this entire discussion is the abduction phenomenon. My research has led me to believe that the abduction phenomenon points to the fact that what we are experiencing is not humans from other planets, it is demonic. We see examples of people being taken at the age of 10 years old and continue to be taken. We see this is generational. We see this is in families, how it continues from one generation to the next. There are a lot of sexual things that happen with abductees.
That's right.
And so clearly, the evidence points abundantly to the fact that this is demonic, emphatically. This is demonic.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of Skywatch TV in our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this incredible masterpiece when you order the Liberty Code special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Tyler Gilreath's new book, The Liberty Code, How the Founder's Secret Writings Exposed the UFO Agenda and the Coming Alien Crisis, but it also includes Tyler Gilreath's best-selling book, Gate of the Gods, Revelation, the Messiah, and the Second Coming of Babylon. Few books in the Bible inspire wonder and debate like Revelation. Dragons, beasts, warring angels, a new heaven and earth. But what if we've been reading it all wrong? Are the four horsemen Babylonian gods? Is Jesus waging war on the powers of old? Could the new heavens and earth be God's final blow to Babylon's ancient king? The mystery is ancient. The clues are real, and now it's all revealed. But that's not all. This incredible special offer also includes The Secret Destiny of America Revealed. This 2-hour documentary on DVD features the legendary Dr. Thomas Horn as he reveals who the God on America's Great Seal and U.S. $1 bill really is. Why 72 pentagrams in the Capitol Dome are used to control the ancient cosmocrators who rule the nations. The coming incarnation of Antichrist and much, much more. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $65. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. So don't delay. You can support the ministry of Skywatch TV and help us continue spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ right now by scanning the QR code on your screen, using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Liberty Code special offer right now. Make sure you get your copy right away. Tyler, with just a few minutes left on the clock, what was the significance of Thomas Jefferson's involvement with unexplained aerial phenomena?
Great question. In the book, I go into a lot of detail, which we don't have time to cover here, but essentially I show that the first three presidents talked about this in some way. We talked about George Washington last week. The second president of the United States, John Adams, actually had an extraterrestrial diary, which I talk about in the book. And then Thomas Jefferson, the third president of the United States, one of the most well-known names in the Founding Fathers, but he also became president of the American Philosophical Society. So the American Philosophical Society is kind of unknown to most people. A modern way of understanding what this society was is basically a TED Talk, okay, where the brightest minds of the day would come together and they would articulate thoughts about the cosmos, about the weather, about health and science, and it's actually very insightful. There's a lot of things that one can glean from those records. But one of the records is Thomas Jefferson, who read the letter from William Dunbar on January 16, 1801. A phenomenon, keyword, was seen to pass Baton Rouge on the night of the 5th of April, 1800, of which the following is the best description I have been able to obtain. It was first seen in the southwest and moved so rapidly, passing over the heads of the spectators, as to disappear in the northeast in about a quarter of a minute. It appeared to be the size of a large house, 70 or 80 feet long, and of a form nearly resembling figure 5 in plate 4. Now, I will tell you, there is no record of the drawing that was supposed to be in the records. Very suspicious. It says that it appeared to be about 200 yards above the surface of the earth, wholly luminous, but not emitting any sparks, of a color resembling the sun, near the horizon in a cold, frosty evening, which may be called a crimson red. When passing right over the head of the spectators, the light of the surface of the earth was little short of the effect of sunbeams, though at the same time looking another way, the stars were visible, which appears to be a confirmation of the opinion formed of its moderate elevation. In passing, a considerable degree of heat was felt, but no electric sensation. Immediately after it disappeared in the northeast, a violent rushing noise was heard, as if the phenomenon was bearing down the forest before it. In a few seconds, a tremendous crash was heard, similar to that of the largest piece of ordnance, causing a very sensible earthquake. I have been informed that scars have been made in the place, rather where the burning body fell, and that a considerable portion of the surface of the earth was found broken up, and every vegetable body burned or greatly scorched. I have not yet received answers to a number of queries I have sent on, which may perhaps bring to light more particulars. Now, unfortunately, we do not have a follow-up to this documentation. There is a second letter that was written to Thomas Jefferson. Here is a photocopy of this letter. It was written by Edward Hansford and John Clark, who were both involved in shipmaking. And they wrote this specifically to Thomas Jefferson. I won't read this in its entirety, but let me just say the highlights. Essentially, there was a fireball above the sky in Portsmouth, and they say, according to the letter written to Jefferson, that this fireball, catch this, transformed in the shape of a turtle, then into the shape of a human skeleton, then into the shape of a Scottish Highlander. Now, that's interesting to me because what we are hearing in the news by whistleblowers is that what modern people are seeing in the sky can indeed change shape. Again, this letter was written to the third president of the United States, July 31st, 1813.
That would suggest that the shape-shifting would be a being and not a ship.
It very well may, because I mentioned the group Skywatcher. One of the things that they have identified is what they call the jellyfish UFO. It looks like a jellyfish, but they say that it almost looks biological in nature. So an entity that is shaping and taking different forms, doing whatever it would like. And so I thought this was a fascinating letter that no one is talking about. That this topic, people seeing objects in the sky, happened all the way in the 1800s, the 1700s. This is not new.
Tyler, with about a minute on the clock, what do you hope readers take away from your historical and theological investigation of UFOs?
That this is more deceptive than anything we could have ever imagined. The fact that Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Andrew Jackson sat in a room and discussed what it is that our House of Representatives, our senators are discussing in 2025. So Christians should be aware. We should take this seriously. We should be prepared for what is coming. We should hold our faith to Jesus now more than ever, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Man. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's all in the book, The Liberty Code, How the Founders' Secret Writings Exposed the UFO Agenda and the Coming Alien Crisis. One more time for Mr. Tyler Gilreath. Tyler, thanks so much for being here. Never enough time. Never enough time. Unfortunately, we've got to go. Ladies and gentlemen, for everybody here in studio, everybody up here on panel, Tyler, thank you so much for being here with us again. I'm Joe Artis Horn. Keep your eyes on the prize, which is Jesus Christ. We'll be back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can support the ministry of Skywatch TV in our continued efforts to share the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the four corners of the world and receive your very own copy of this incredible masterpiece when you order the Liberty Code special offer. Not only does this incredible opportunity include Tyler Gilreath's new book, The Liberty Code, How the Founders' Secret Writings Exposed the UFO Agenda and the Coming Alien Crisis, but it also includes Tyler Gilreath's best-selling book, Gate of the Gods, Revelation, the Messiah, and the Second Coming of Babylon. Few books in the Bible inspire wonder and debate like Revelation. Dragons, beasts, warring angels, a new heaven and earth. But what if we've been reading it all wrong? Are the four horsemen Babylonian gods? Is Jesus waging war on the powers of old? Could the new heavens and earth be God's final blow to Babylon's ancient king? The mystery is ancient. The clues are real, and now it's all revealed. But that's not all. This incredible special offer also includes The Secret Destiny of America Revealed. This 2-hour documentary on DVD features the legendary Dr. Thomas Horn as he reveals who the God on America's Great Seal and U.S. $1 bill really is. Why 72 pentagrams in the Capitol Dome are used to control the ancient cosmocrators who rule the nations. The coming incarnation of Antichrist and much, much more. Sold separately, these items hold a retail value of over $65. Yours now for your donation of only $45, which includes free shipping to all U.S. orders. So don't delay. You can support the ministry of Skywatch TV and help us continue spreading the gospel of Jesus Christ right now by scanning the QR code on your screen, using the camera app on your phone for instant access to this special opportunity. You can also visit us at skywatchtvstore.com or call 1-844-750-4985 and ask for the Liberty Code special offer right now.